Hey guys, today we're going to go through a medical decision-making exercise created by the Department of Bioinformatics and Dr. Chase, and we're going to kind of approach a scenario with a hypothetical patient and try and figure out how to help that patient make the best possible decision, taking into account all possibilities for their course of care. So the learning objectives today are to basically help a patient see all of the possible results of choices that they might make. We're going to learn about a tool called a decision tree. And in a minute, I'm going to show you a piece of cool free software called Silver Decision that'll really help visualize and calculate through decision trees. We're going to discuss how patients will determine the value of potential outcomes, perfect health, death, and everything in between, how they're going to give that utility or value. We're going to see sort of the subjective importance of how different patients value the same situation differently. And then basically, as part of that, we're going to address patients who are more or less risk averse or risk loving. So then the checklist is basically, are we being exhaustive and thinking of all of the big outcomes that might occur in a given course of care? Are we really being honest with ourselves and with the patient in understanding what each one of these outcomes means for our patient? Have we properly evaluated the likelihood of a given outcome? So are we being pessimistic or optimistic? And it's important for us to be sort of clear-eyed in estimating our probabilities, as whenever we have good information, we've got to really try and use that information to calculate the probability of an outcome. And then, quite importantly, we need to make sure that we are listening to the patient and believing them when they tell us how they value a given outcome, that we're not being prescriptive and using our value system instead of theirs. So the case we're going to look at today is a 56-year-old male construction worker who has a compound fracture that's become badly infected. And the question is, should we just go ahead and amputate right now, try and avoid sepsis, necrotizing fasciitis, etc., by performing a BKA below the knee amputation? Or can we give this person a shot at recovery and keeping their lower leg and their foot by doing a debridement and antibiotic treatment, and then kind of hoping for the best? So one way to sort of pick through this would be to sort of have a discussion with the patient and not use a visual tool like a decision tree, but the better way to really make the best possible decision is to make a sort of exhaustive inventory of what each choice will mean, the probabilities related to the outcomes connected to our choices, and then to try and calculate the best course of action for our patient. So following the steps, we would make a list of our potential outcomes. We'd link these outcomes in the form of a decision tree. So we'd make the decision here to go one way or the other, and then we'd branch off more fully into the potential outcomes of those choices. And then we would ask the patient to give an estimate of the value of any given outcome. And in this case, we don't have a patient, so you guys will be sort of estimating, pretending you are the patients. But you're going to basically work anything between full recovery, which is perfect health, and death, which is death. And you're going to do all of this through a decision tree. So in this example, we're going to work the information that Dr. Chasen has provided to us, and we're going to build this tree right here using these probabilities. And as you can see here, we've been pretty exhaustive in mapping out the possibilities that might happen. And the probabilities are again given in this table for each branch in the decision tree. And what's left for you guys to fill in and to work through is what utilities each terminal node, these triangles here, will be given, so that we can do what's called rolling back, which is where we collapse the trees in accordance with the probabilities back and get a statistically derived estimate of the value that's likely to occur if we pick antibiotics, or a statistically derived value that's likely if we go immediately to amputation. And again, that's called rolling back. So just give me a second. We're going to switch over to Silver Decision software and get started making the tree. So go ahead and type in silverdecisions.pl to get started, and then click on Run. So we're going to work through making this tree right here in the Silver Decisions software, and seeing how that basically will let us get started playing with decision trees and basically taking the hassle out of the tree making part, so that you can focus on the likely outcomes and the utilities of those outcomes. So just to get started, it's a really simple program. So most of the work can be done just basically with the mouse. So double click and add a decision node. Decision nodes are these red boxes always, and start in the manual layout because that lets you drag and drop the nodes and the edges, which are these things that connect the nodes. So I'm going to go ahead and label this as Dr. Chase has, fractured ankle. And just to continue working, I double click on the node itself and I add a chance node. I'm going to go ahead and work up the top side here and just keep it all connected, just so you guys get the hang of it. And then partway through, I'm just going to fast forward to the completed tree so that you can see how to manipulate the tree once you've sort of got stuff built. But to begin with, you're going to click on, double click to make the decision node, and then you can click on this edge. The arrows are called edges, and we'll label it, again, just as Dr. Chase has, antibiotics corresponding to antibiotics right here. This chance node, as you can see, splits off again into two more chance nodes. So we're going to do that work ourselves right here. So click add, oops, sorry. It's actually a good way to show you. Double click on it and click delete. Add chance node and add chance node. And again, we can label these edges just as he has here. Foot saved and infection not controlled. And then again, as we can see, the foot saved has two terminal nodes as its option. So double click, add a terminal node, double click and add another terminal node, and we can go ahead and label those full recovery and label this edge recovery with limp because the guy didn't get completely better. If you want, you can label the nodes themselves right here by clicking on the node and then typing in some information into label. I think that that's fine if you want to do that. Obviously, it's not going to affect the function of the tree, but the convention I'm following is the convention that Dr. Chase uses where he labels the edges rather than the nodes. So I've just jumped ahead from the small tree to the complete tree that's been filled out in accordance with the probabilities given in this scenario right here, and the utilities that were derived by students who completed this exercise in earlier years. In some cases, there's a lot of literature about how patients feel about a particular outcome, and those can be helpful when guesstimating how a hypothetical patient will feel about a hypothetical outcome. But in clinical practice, of course, the patient is going to have a lot of input into how much they'll value full recovery, recovery with a limp, above the knee or below the knee amputation, etc. Death is pretty conventionally valued as 0, and full recovery is pretty conventionally valued at 100. But it doesn't have to be that way because sometimes it's pretty onerous to go through whatever treatment path the patient will have to go through. So anyway, just to understand how to manipulate these layouts, like I said, I start on manual because I can move things around, and then I like to go to cluster because it justifies to the right. Just as a point of sort of good housekeeping, this layout button lets you play around with the margins and the sizes of the nodes and how much slant is on the edges and how wide or tall the tree is. And then the details tab lets you give a label like ankle case, and then you can put a subdescriptor if you wanted. That's if you had to like turn this in or something like that. So, and you wanted it to be well labeled. So again, it's mostly point and click. So I've typed in the probability that was given in this example. One of the things I want to show you is that when you leave the number sign in place, or when you type the number sign in place, automatically the odds of the other branch will be calculated. It's important to note here that these are not probability based edges, because this is a decision node. So we're deciding which way to go. There isn't a probability about it. We only go the way that we decide. And then probabilities emerge after chance nodes only. So again, there's no option to type in probability here versus there's an option to type in probability here. The payoffs, again, are typed on the edges. And the payoffs don't have to sum to any specific number. They are just as estimated by the patient, but the probabilities do have to sum to 100% only. So just as an example, this is a three-way chance node. If I were to change a probability here to 0.95, now just these two edges alone add up to more than 100%. So there's been a mistake. Just Control Z and undo that. Another, I think, valuable point is that you should only be typing payoffs on edges leading to terminal nodes. So like, don't mess around and type in payoff on this edge, because this payoff should be being calculated as part of the rolling back as you can see right here, as part of the rolling back of the tree. So in other words, this tree that has a node for full recovery valued at 100, recovery with a limb valued at 80, but the likelihood of getting those two things is 60% times 100 and 40% times 80, so 60 plus 32, 92. It wouldn't really make sense to type in the payoff unless I wanted to do the calculating work myself, and that's what the program is doing for us. So anyway, play around with the program. It really does a pretty great job of allowing you to build a decision tree quickly, type in the utilities and the probabilities really fast, and get a nice looking tree. Just the rule tab that I'm clicking on up here is following the maximization rule right now, but we could pick the minimization rule, and that would pick the branch, basically, or branches, which led to the lower outcome. So you can see here, this gives you 53.65 utility as a sum of all of these rollback branches, and this gives you this immediate choice to have the below the knee amputation gives you a guaranteed utility of 60. So in this example, the patient with an infection in their compound ankle fracture is probably better off, based on all the information we have, going immediately to amputation, which is obviously a hard decision to take, but definitely better than a chance of death here. This is a great program to help you support your decision analysis, and I hope you guys find it useful. Thanks a lot.